Hey everyone, hope you're well. Well now, you take equal measures classic rock, alt rock, metal, and punk, mash them all together in late 80s Seattle, or in one case here, a few years later in San Diego, California, and what you've got is grunge. Though there were myriad of grunge bands popping up all over North America as the 80s rolled into the 90s, 4, soon to be 5, rose to the top of the heap in both popularity and in album sales. Nirvana, Soundgarden, Pearl Jam, and Alice in Chains. Eventually, the Stone Temple Pilots would join the fold as well. Now, I'm not telling you anything you don't already know here, so I'm not going to prattle on for any length of time, as I tend to be guilty of sometimes, with regards to, the birth of grunge, its story, the bands, its rise and eventual fall, its post-grunge revival, so on and so forth. We all know that story. Suffice to say, these particular 5 bands, the big 5 if you will, pumped out some killer guitar riffs throughout the 90s and beyond. Some still are, for that matter. Today, we're going to have a look at 5 of the best ones, one from each band, and I'm going to show you how to play them. So let's close in here on the fretboard and get started, shall we? Alright then, let's get this show on the road with the first of 5 little mini tutorials, if you will, for these 5 great grunge riffs from the 90s. We're going to start out with Pearl Jam and Alive, and we are in standard tuning for this one. We are on a Les Paul style guitar in the bridge pickup position, down. And if you've ever seen Stone Gossard play this one live, either in person or on YouTube, you'll see that he almost always plays this one on a Les Paul. You'll see that in my performance of this one, I played it on a Stratocaster. It sounded maybe a wee bit thin, but not too bad, I don't think. And it kind of goes something like this. All know that one. So it starts with a slide down the neck into an upstroke on the open G, open D, open A. And now you're going to downstroke the exact same strings. And then another downstroke, you're going to drop into an A power chord. It's all kind of loose, this opening. Kind of like that. And now, all in one motion, we're going to slide into the 7th fret of the A string with our middle finger. We are not going to sit on that note for any length of time whatsoever. It's more or less just a stopping point for the slide. And when we get to that, we're going to grab on an upstroke the open D, and then hammer on, all in one motion, the 7th fret onto the 9th fret of the D string. And then resolve it back to the 7 and let it ring for a bit. And now you're going to go back to the A power chord, and this time it's a little bit different. It's an upstroke on the open strings and then a down, up, down on the A power chord. Kind of like that. And then you're going to go right back into the slide hammer-ons. Now, this time, when you hit that 9, you're not going to resolve it back to the 7 and let it sit. You are going to go back to the 7, but you're going to go right back onto the 9 again. And now, when you get to that 9, you're going to give it a little half-step bend release, pull it off to 7, and then pull that index finger off that 7th fret to the open D, and in the process, you're going to catch the open G with it as well. So the open G rings out with the open D. Kind of like that. So from the beginning. And then back into one A power chord before starting the entire thing over again. And you're going to repeat that whole riff that we just went through 4 times at the intro of Alive. And to finish up, before we get to the first verse, we're going to go into this. So it's basically an F major bar chord here at the 8th fret position, but we're just barring the kind of like a double stop at the 10th fret of the D and the G string, maybe a bit of the B string as well. 4 times. You can like either 4 downstrokes, or you can, you know, strum it down, up, down, up. And then you're going to reach up there with your pinky to the 12th fret of the G string, and maybe catch a bit of the B string as well. And then resolve it back to a C major chord, but just on the D, G, and B string. 10, 9, 8. Now that's what Stone's doing. Now Mike McCready is down here playing in F. And he's just jumping from the F, like a typical F cowboy chord, 4 times. And with a little mute before he jumps into a C chord and lets it ring. And that's it for Alive by Pearl Jam. So let's run through it slowly. And then slide out of that. And then the first verse is just the exact same thing as the riff, just played a little more quietly. And that's it for Alive. And let's move on to Rusty Cage by Soundgarden. All right then, Rusty Cage and Soundgarden with Chris Cornell and Kim Thale. We've got rather unorthodox tuning going on with this one. We're in standard tuning, but we've got our low E string tuned all the way down to B. So here's your B note at the 2nd fret of the A string, and here's our low E. That's way down there. That's a 2.5 step detune of the low E string. It's all floppy and shit. Anyway, this opens with this kind of call and response. Only the studio version. They never do this live. But the studio version starts with this kind of call and response. One guitar back and forth with the other. That there. A lot of gain if you want to try and replicate this tone. A lot of gain going on here. They've also got a wah pedal on for this section here, backed all the way off, just basically using it as a filter. They're not actually, you know, paddling the wah pedal back and forth. And so that's it for tone. You know, a lot of gain, wah pedal in the backed off position. So that's the first guitar. So we're sliding from 12 to 14 of the A string, picking that 14 again, and then hammering onto 16. Now we're string skipping down to the G string, hammering onto 16 from 14, and then back to 14. So that's the first guitar. And then there's a little pause, and then the second guitar responds. And that's the second guitar. Second guitar sliding from 12 to 14 of the A string again, flattening our index finger down to the 14 of the G string, and then hammering on to 16. And then repeat. Kind of like that. I've seen guys covering this on YouTube and teaching this on YouTube and really not getting that part correct. Trying to do that slide from 12 to 14 with their middle finger and then reaching down here with their index to the 14 for the hammer on to 16. And at speed, it's really bloody difficult to do. It's really hard to stop that at speed, that slide. You know, it's possible, but it ain't easy. You overshoot that 14th fret slide almost every time. And so, you know, there's no live performance of them actually doing this. They never do this section live, but I'm sure this is what they're doing, all index work. And then rolling it down, you know, or just flattening your index on that 14 of the G. Like that. And so you're going to repeat that 5 times. The first 3 times with a pause between the call and response. Pause. 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 So on and so forth. The final 2 times, it double times. Kind of like that. And, you know, it's possible to play all this whole intro on one guitar. A little tricky, but it is possible. And then we're into the main riff, and the main riff is very similar to what we just did there when it was double timed. And really hard to play when you first learn it. It's really uncomfortable under the fingers, but once you get it, after you play it 20 or 30 times, it just, you know, it all starts to fall together. So now we're using that detuned low E string. We're grabbing the 10 of the low E, sliding into 12, picking it again, and then hammering onto 14. And then you're going to hammer on 12 to 14 of the A. Back it up to 10 of the low E. I was playing this wrong in my performance of this one, but this is what's correct. I was doing this. I was going back to the 10, and you're supposed to go down to the 12, 14 of the A. Right there. And now you're going to do another slide from 12 or from 10 to 12. Flatten your finger down to the 12 of the A string, hammer onto 14. Back it up to 10 of the low E and do it again. So, a lot of sliding going on here. There's 3 slides in total. The first one, another one, another one. And that is how you play, and that just continues on all throughout the first verse, and that's pretty much it for the riff to Rusty Cage by Soundgarden. And let's move on. Let's have a look at Breed by Nirvana. All right, Breed by Nirvana, Kurt Cobain. Goes a little something like this. Over and over and over again. We are in standard tuning with this one. We're starting with an F sharp 3-finger power chord. I'm going to downstroke that twice. You can downstroke this entire riff, or you can kind of alternate back and forth, down, up, down, up. You know, it's fairly loosely played. So, double hit of this power chord. You're going to lift your index finger off the 2nd fret of the low E string off to open, keeping those 2 fingers there on the 4th fret of the A and the D, and then right back on. And then you're going to jump up to an A power chord, a 3-finger power chord, and you're going to bend all 3 strings, but especially the low E. You know, a little quarter step bend. And then off to open E again. And then when you go off to that open E, you're kind of just a down up before you start the riff again. Now, when you're doing that little bend, you're trying to bend all 3 strings, but really, you know, it's kind of hard to bend those the pinky and ring finger strings at the 7th fret. But you know, make sure you get that low E string bent, which you're holding there at the 5th fret. Now you're going to repeat that 16 times before we get to the first verse, and the first verse is just this. And that is a double stop at the 11th fret of the D and the G string, and you're just going to hammer on that for a few measures. And then you're going to back it up to the 10th fret of the D string and just give it a little waggle. And now you're going to repeat that, I think, 3 or 4 times during the first verse. And each time you go back into that double stop, you're going to slide back into it from the 9th fret. Kind of like that. So you repeat that, I think, 4 times. The very last time, instead of going off to that 10th fret, the last time of the D string, you're going to go into an F sharp power chord before going into the chorus. So kind of like this. Like that. And then we're into the chorus, which is just D, a D chord minus the high E string. So a D, just those 3 notes there. Into an A power chord, up to a C power chord, 3-finger, back to a B power chord. Double hits on all of them, except I think the first one. Now, even the first one, I think you're hitting that twice. I think the very first time you just hit it once, and then every other time you're hitting it twice. And I think even once or twice he hits it 3 times, that D. You know, it's very loose, this whole thing. And then we're back into the main riff again. Oh, damn, that's fun to play. You can't help but start rocking when you're playing that one. And that's it. That's it for Breed by Nirvana, and minus any, you know, solos and bridges and whatnot. But we're just looking at the main riffs in this little, in these little mini tutorials. Let's move on to Them Bones by Alice in Chains and Jerry Cantrell. Alright then, Them Bones, one of the heaviest riffs from the grunge era, from Jerry Cantrell and Alice in Chains. Lots of down picking, chugging going on there, lots of palm muting and whatnot. Rather unorthodox tuning for this one. We are tuned the entire guitar down 1/2 step to E flat. Yet we have the low E string tuned down another full step from that down to C sharp. So here's the full tuning. C sharp. And the rest of the guitar tuned down to E flat. Now it starts with that little double stop right there. 5th fret of the G string, 6th fret of the B string. Give it a little waggle, hit those 2 notes together. And then you're going to go open E, all downstrokes and all palm muted. 2 downstrokes on the open E, 4 downstrokes on the 1-finger power chord at the 1st fret, 3 downstrokes at the 2nd fret power chord, and 1 more at the 3rd fret. Kind of like that. And then after you get to that 3rd fret power chord, you're going to go off to the open E for 2 more downstrokes. Kind of like that. So. And those little D shapes there, those little D shaped double stops, really dig into those, you know, and give them a good little waggle. palm muted. And the final fourth time that you run through that progression, you're going to stop right at that third fret single fingered power chord. And then we're into the first verse, which is a D right there minus the low E string. And this is not palm muted, so we're going to hit that D right into a low E string, a downstroke of the low E string. And then just 3 one-finger power chords running from 1 to 2 to 3. And before you go back to D, you're going to hit one more open E. And again, really dig into those Ds. It's almost all played with your index finger. And you're going to repeat that, I think, 8 times. And then we're into the chorus. More index finger power chords. We're going to slide into 8. I'm going to hit that, I don't know, 6, 7 times. Back it up to 7. One finger index power chords. You hit that 5 or 6 times. Into that little lick there, hammering on 9 to 11 of the D, down into this little D-shaped double stop on the 9 of the G and 10 of the B. Now we're going to go back into another slide, this time into 10. And that finishes the chorus. So we're going to slide that one finger power chord into 10, back it up to 9, and then back it up to 8 for one final hit. And then we're back into the riff. And that pretty much covers them bones, minus the solo and any bridges. And so let's move on. We got one left. We have Interstate Love Song from Stone Temple Pilots from San Diego, California, the only grunge group in this little set of tutorials, not from Seattle. So let's have a look at that one now. It's probably the most involved of all of these riffs. Alright, Interstate Love Song by the Stone Temple Pilots. We're in standard tuning with this one, and this one is easily the most involved of all the little mini tutorials that we're doing here. You know, there's an intro, a little acoustic intro with a simple slide solo, and then there's the main riff, and then there's the first verse, and I'm going to show you all of that. So see if I can cram it all into about 6 or 7 minutes. So it starts on acoustic guitar. I'm going to play it on this guitar with my volume rolled off a little bit to kill some of the saturation. Just show you the chords. We're starting in C sharp minor. And then we're going to move down to an E major, down to A sus2. Now A sus2 is just like an A minor chord, except we've got our finger off the first fret of the B string, so it's open B. Up to a G sharp major, move that up to A major, back to E major. So those are the chords, the acoustic chords at the beginning. C sharp minor, E major, A sus2, G sharp major, A major, E major. Now while that's going on, there is a little slide solo. So I'm going to just crank up the gain a little bit here, crank up my volume, maybe keep that there. So the slide solo. And that's the slide solo. So we're sliding into 6 of the G string, giving it some vibrato. back it up to 4, pick it, and then slide it up to 6 and back to 4 again. And then you're going to grab the 4 of the D, slide it into 6 of the D. Now we're going to back up to 2 of the D, pick it, slide it up to 4 and back to 2. Now we're going to go back up to 4 and then slide up to 6, down to 5 of the G, up to 8, and then we're going to go 9, 8, 6. And then slide that back to 4. So that's the slide solo. And then we're into the main riff. I'm just going to back off the gain here for clarity of notes. So that little lick there is just cool as hell. So we're grabbing the 2nd fret of the B string, playing along with the open E. We're bending that a half step and releasing it. And then you're grabbing the 2 open strings on the bottom, the B and the E. And then you're going to grab the 2nd fret of the G, and on the upstroke you're going to catch the high E, maybe a bit of the B as well. And now you're going to go 1 of the G, hammer onto 2, and then just ride down the open strings, the open B, open E, and let them all ring together. So all these notes, they're all ringing out, you know, and now you're going to go into E major. And then you're going to jump up here to an F sharp minor chord just on the A, D, and G strings. So ring and pinky on the 4 of the A and the D, and then index back here on the 2 of the G. So it's basically an F sharp minor chord. But and then back to E. And now you're going to do it again. And you're going to jump up to this chord. I don't know what this chord is called, but it's he jumps up to this chord every second time. So I got my ring finger on the E note there at the 7th fret of the A string, 6 of the D, and then back here to 4 of the G. So it kind of goes like this. And I think one of the guitars is just going back and forth between E major, F sharp minor, and then back to E major again. Kind of like that, while the other one is going up to that chord. And now I think you repeat that a couple of times, and then we're into the first verse. So some funky chords going on here that are really hard to play, as you may have just noticed. I'm fumbling to get into that one right there. So C sharp minor. So we're kind of just strumming that, a couple of little mutes in the middle. So I think you kind of like downstroke it twice, and then a couple of mutes, and then three or four more strums. And then we're into this C minor chord with a flat 6th. So it's like a little F shape here with a bar on the 3rd fret with our index. So I'm barring the 3rd fret all the way up to the A string. I've got my pinky on 6 of the D, my middle finger on 5, and my ring finger on 5, and my middle finger on 4. So it's just a little F shape with a bar. So it's a C minor flat 6th. So. Now this chord, Really hard to get into from that C minor chord. This is a B sus2 chord with a flat something. So I've got my middle finger up here on the second fret of the A string, my pinky on 3 of the D, my index back here on 1 of the G, and my ring finger down here on 2 of the B. Strange chord. And then we're into this A sharp type chord. Again, I don't know what this is called. It's like a D shape here on the A, D, and G string. I've got my index on 1, my ring finger on 2 of the D, my middle finger down here on 1 of the G string. So it's like a D shape, and I've got my pinky down here on the 2nd fret of the B. So that's the 4 chords during the verse. That's a C minor, or C sharp minor, and now we're into C minor flat 6th, into this B sus2 type chord, into this A sharp, into an A power chord, and then we're back into right? And then repeats. And that is it, my friends. That's all I'm going to show you for that one. That's a tough one to play, and good luck with it. And I certainly hope you enjoyed these 5 little mini tutorials on how to play these 5 great grunge riffs from the early 90s for the most part. And hope you're well out there in your little guitar corner of the world, wherever that may be. And, you know, drop me a subscribe if you haven't done that. That would be fantastic. Hit the notification bell so you know when I upload something new. And you guys take care of yourselves. We'll see you next time. Cheers.